I'm Cole Haddon, and what you're about to listen to is a bonus episode from Season 1 of 5 a.m. StoryTalk. In this podcast bonus eps, my guests break down a seminal piece of art from their lives, what I describe as mini masterclasses, although not always on the subject you expect. These bonus episodes are exclusive to my paid supporters in the season they were originally published. But in the following season, they're each unlocked, one at a time, so everyone can listen to them alongside the new episodes. Your paid subscriptions get you early access to these bonus eps, months and months early, but they also help keep the lights on here. In fact, Season 2 of this podcast enjoys several production upgrades because so many of you believe in this multimedia arts and culture conversation. I hope you consider becoming a paid supporter yourself, which you can learn more about in the show notes. Now, enjoy this 5 a.m. Story Talk bonus episode, Story Talkers. Welcome back, my friends. Thank you so much for being a paid subscriber. Your support helps keep the lights on here at 5 a.m. Story Talk. Not to mention fund my addiction to the arts. It's a terrible problem. This bonus episode wouldn't be possible without you. I'm here with my friend, actor, and filmmaker Thomas Jane to discuss a seminal piece of art from his life, the film Seconds. In particular, we're going to be digging into the first act together. I'm going to let him tell you about it, but first, a quick overview of those responsible for it. Seconds was released in 1966 and was written by Louis John Carlino, adapted from the 1966 novel by David Eli. John Frankenheimer directed. Rock Hudson stars with others, including John Randolph, who will be key to what we discussed today. Now, let's get into it. Tom, I asked you to pick a film for us to get into that had a huge influence on you as a storyteller, and you picked a brilliant fucking one. Can you tell me a bit about the film and why you wanted to talk about it?
So this is a John Frankenheimer film directed by 1966, which is kind of a really peak period of Hollywood. You know, just as the studio version of Hollywood was sort of fading away and this new rebellious Hollywood was coming into it was rising through the culture war that was happening between the generations, and this movie is kind of caught in the middle of those two things. We have a big Hollywood star, Rock Hudson, Frankenheimer, who's a very well-established director. I think the couple of years before, he had just directed The Train with Burt Lancaster. Wonderful, wonderful movie about some French resistance fighters who were trying to save a train full of precious French art from the Nazis. Great. Such a great film. Frankenheimer is one of the greats. You know, he came up through television, live TV. He was directing live television in the 50s. You know, he did like 10 years of live stage productions with 3 cameras, and it was like, those were the days when you had to turn on the TV at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and you were watching a live performance on your TV, and it was all happening. And Frankenheimer loved that. And he said that if he could stay in that genre of filmmaking, that's all he wanted to do. He loved it. But of course, that died and forced Frankenheimer into doing other things. And we're the better for it because we've got some great movies. The Manchurian Candidate. People will probably remember Ronin with Robert De Niro, one of the great heist movies with one of the great chase sequences of all time. So you're looking at a really a guy who was a master of his craft, and he was a master of his craft because of the live television that he did. And that I can't overstate the fact that the reason why we had such fantastic films in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s was because of the live television movement out of New York, where you had great stage actors who would do these live television plays, you know, that were written, you know, Patty Chayefsky writing, you know, all these writers writing, and all these great Broadway actors. And then you had these young guys who were trying to figure out this new medium. They were stage directors, most of them, but not all of them. Frankenheimer did. I don't think he came from the theater. I actually don't know, but not all of them, but a lot of stage guys. Lumet certainly, also a live theater guy. So these guys learned their craft, honed their craft, doing these 3-camera under the gun live productions out of New York, and they became some of the best directors that we've ever seen, and there's a reason for that. So this film is dear to my heart because it kind of falls in between. It's a uneasy marriage between generations. Seconds is about a middle-aged guy who wants to start over, and he's lost, and his life feels like it's over, and he gets a call from a buddy, and he has a chance to be reborn. It's this guy's journey through. It's sort of a midlife crisis fantasy. What if I could start all over again? I don't like the way this played out. I've got a upper middle class house, nice house. I got a nice car. I've got a lovely wife. I've got a daughter who's married now and off doing her own thing. I don't talk to her very much. I've got a job at a bank, and probably will become president, but none of it is what he wanted. It's like the difference between being a train conductor and a sailor. I think we all can relate to how we feel like, so we're just sort of like getting up and sitting in the train conductor seat, and we hit the button and we go down these tracks, and we know exactly where we're going to go every single day. And we don't have any agency, and why that is, why aren't we sailors? What happened? Where did we go wrong? So this man played by John Randolph, who was a member of the Actors Studio, who I'm a big fan of, but it also bred a lot of lefties. And this period in the 50s, we had this whole communist witch hunt where Hollywood, a lot of people lost their careers because they got blacklisted for being lefty, commie. They were leaning a little too outspoken about their commie ideals. And that became a huge thing. And we had the McCarthy era, right? And Randolph, along with dozens of other actors, got blacklisted and didn't work. He was a stage actor, Actors Studio. He did a couple of movies, and then he got blacklisted for being too outspoken and didn't work for 10 years. Frankenheimer hired him for Seconds. It was literally, the guy hadn't worked in 10 years. And that's who we meet at the beginning. Randolph plays the middle-aged, over-the-hill bank director who is going to go on this journey. And he's in the whole first act is John Randolph. And I'd like to talk about the first acts, just sort of the structure of it, and how Frankenheimer is able to create the movie, the experience that we're going to have watching this guy go on this journey. Because when you look at the screenplay, it's really very simple, right? If you just look at the plot, the story, sort of what happens, it's really simple. But what holds you, in my opinion, is how Frankenheimer sort of what he does with the camera, and how he unfurls the story, that you're going to watch.
The tension he achieves with the camera, the anxiety that's ever present, but then those questions, you're some 20 minutes in before you even begin to remotely understand what the movie is going to be about. But you're leaning in the whole time. Is he a spy? Why are people passing him things in the subway? What's going on with his wife that he's not telling her? All of these things. And it's such simple screenwriting by just making the audience ask questions so that they don't want to look away.
And that kind of speaks to the genre element, because it does have a little bit of a sci-fi vibe to it, but it's very grounded. James Wong Howe shot the damn thing. One of the great cinematographers of the Hollywood era, right?
Mhm.
He was full on the big Klieg lights and all. And, he came up in the 40s and the 50s with just the glamour of Hollywood. He was so good at it. And this entire film is handheld. And I hate handheld. I hate handheld movies. Like, I don't know why I'm fucking shaking around so much, but it makes you feel like something's happening.
Mhm.
It drives me bananas. But James Wong Howe does the best handheld that I've ever seen because it doesn't call attention to itself. It's smooth when it needs to be smooth. He puts it on sticks when the scene calls for it, like when they're sitting around in an office, and the handheld adds that sense that you were talking about, that verite, that spy movie kind of feeling, that surveillance kind of feeling. It feels like this guy, this middle-aged dude who there's nothing really special about him. Somehow we're spying on him. Why? Why are we spying on this guy? And just the opening credits, Frankenheimer does these close-ups of a face, but he shoots it on a silver mirrored piece of plastic. And you can tell somebody's actually curving and distorting the face. So that there's just these shots of like eyeballs, and they're morphing and distorting shot on this silverback plastic. So right away, you're like, what the hell? And Jerry Goldsmith, his music is like grand chamber music. It's like the grandest organ music. It's like something massive is happening, but you're just staring at an eyeball. And the contrast between those things, and you're like, okay, right away, here's an intimate story that is going to be of utmost consequence to one guy. And it sets it up, even if it's unconscious, that this is going to be a tragic story of a man. I think it's the first shot. We open in a train station, and it's John Randolph, and it's a close-up of his face. But this close-up is different than any close-up that I'd ever seen before. I'm not sure if this is the first time that this had been done. I don't know, but it was the first time I'd ever seen it. When I saw Seconds in my mid-20s, Frankenheimer took a harness, and he harnessed the camera to the actor. So he had a harness and put it on the actor and had the camera, and he put a wide lens on, and the actor carried this camera around. So that's why that first shot, every little move he makes, you can feel it in the camera. You're like, the fuck? So already it's unsettling. And you're just looking at this guy in a train station. I think it's New York City, the Grand Central Station. And you're following this guy, and the way Frankenheimer does these handheld low angle shots, watching this guy walk through a train station. I was thinking, in the script, it's like a man waits in a train station, he walks through the station and gets on a train. Right? That's the sort of the bullet. And Frankenheimer does it with this voyeuristic, like he's being followed.
Yes.
And then Randolph gets on, his name is Hamilton in the story. So Hamilton gets on a train, and sure enough, somebody taps him on the shoulder. He is being followed. And he says his name, Hamilton. And Hamilton turns, doesn't know this guy, and the guy hands him a little piece of paper. And then the doors close. And then the train starts moving off, and Hamilton's watching this stranger who we've never seen before. And right away, you're hooked. You're like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
Is this a movie?
I used the word tension already, but this anxiety that on the surface you think it's just the camera work. But I think a lot of it is this, it's almost an intergenerational tension, because you've got a relatively conventional face of a man, probably late 50s, 60s, something like that, doing this incredibly modern thing. The camera, the
Right.
angle.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Then you've got organs, which feels very old, like some version out of the past, but it's also feels so new, because they even get to the point that you're in Malibu when he changes. He gets
yeah. these sort of inherent tension that you're looking at.
Rock
that's
Hudson, old
unsettled.
Hollywood. Rock Hudson doesn't belong in cinema verite. He doesn't belong in a world of handheld. You're supposed to pause and admire his chiseled jaw. The idea that before that, I don't even think Rock Hudson had ever been in a film that considered him anything other than the most desirable man in the world. Seeing a man like that with that image,
Well, yeah, that's
inward.
kind of, yeah. Let's just go through the first act till we get to Rock, just because that's what I always remember. That's the hook. That's what Frankenheimer just did so well, and the simplicity of the story is something that I think also right away you're kind of implicitly being told that this is a story about identity, that the ego has something to do with it. And that's just the way that Frankenheimer shoots this guy. They cut to him sitting on the train and he's trying to read a newspaper. You're just like, we're just watching a regular guy who's been handed this weird piece of paper. And now he's on the train and he's trying to do a crossword puzzle, but he has to put his glasses on. And then Frankenheimer does close-ups of the man's hands, which are middle-aged. He's pointing out the age of this guy and the mundanity of this guy. And then I think Randolph, who is playing Hamilton looks out the window of the train and he's watching the world go by. And there's this sort of a long shot of just this dude, this middle-aged guy watching the world go by out the window. But then Frankenheimer cuts to the other window and he match cuts it. So you're looking at one window and then you're looking at the other window. So the world's going this way and then it's going this way. And then you cut back to Hamilton. So you get this feeling like he's boxed in and he does it with cuts. So you're being told, here's a middle-aged dude watching his life go by and he feels trapped. And all it is a guy riding on a train, going home. And he hits his station. He gets picked up by his middle-aged wife, this plain woman who looks like any woman you'd see who's his age. And they have their 1966 or 65 station wagon, and they're driving. And then they have this mundane conversation about nothing, and he's kind of distracted and she's kind of aware of that. We also get the idea that something's going on with him that she doesn't know about, but she's not going to pry, and that it's kind of been this way for a long time. Like he's not very communicative with his wife, there's no like, how you doing, honey? I had such a terrible day. It's great to see you. It's like nothing. It's like crickets. And then Frankenheimer cuts to this middle-class neighborhood and it just looks like a prison, because you're seeing it through this guy's eyes. And this is all visual storytelling. You're being told this story of a guy who gets on a train and goes home from work and gets picked up by his wife and goes to his house. That's the story.
And how counterculture that is, by the way, that you're describing as a prison. He's going home to a suburb that everybody in America has been told, this is your dream, to the perfect, life at home, kids off going to college. Everything is everything we're supposed to want. And the man seems like he's in free fall.
You're right. It's so counterculture because that's exactly what the younger generation was rebelling against. Against everything that society told them to do. Get an education, get a good job, wear a suit, shave, cut your hair short. Like that was the 1950s. The 1960s comes and people are like, you know what? Fuck you. We're not doing it. And there was this clash because the older generation had fought so hard to create that. I mean, they were the great generation because they had built America. They built the middle class, which, by the way, was a first in the world. America created the middle class. the middle-class guy, the guy who could own his own business, a barbershop, a newsstand, nail clipping joint. We created that whole middle level where you didn't have to be a peon and you didn't have to be born into a lot of money. You could actually forge your own way. And all these middle-class neighborhoods were created all over the country after World War II. But the kids who grew up in those middle-class homes hated it. And they wanted nothing to do with it. And that's what this movie was, in a weird way, that's who this movie was for. Those kids who were watching, Frankenheimer was speaking to those brains. They just had to show the middle-class suburban neighborhood and this middle-aged dude with his middle-aged wife, and they were like, yes, they knew exactly what Frankenheimer was talking about. They go into his nice home, and you see him sitting by the phone. And Frankenheimer does this huge shot of the phone in the foreground. And behind it is Hamilton. And he's just sitting there. All right. And the phone rings. And it's really loud. And he grabs it right away because he doesn't want to let his wife know that this is coming in. And the guy on a phone goes, Hamilton, that's you? It's me, Charlie. And Hamilton goes, no, man. Charlie's dead. And he's like, no, it's really me. I'm alive. And he's like about to hang up. And Charlie is able to describe Hamilton's study to him. The pictures on the wall. He's like, go to your tennis trophy and turn it over. Peel it back. You see what I wrote there? And he wrote something in Latin there. Something like always free or something like that in Latin. And he convinces him, my college buddy Charlie, who is dead, is now alive. And he gives him a name, Wilson. He tells him the address that somebody had given him on the phone. That came from his dead friend, Charlie, who wants him to go to that address tomorrow. But what's interesting about the dialogue is Charlie never describes like anything about what's going to happen, but we get the sense that Hamilton can also escape, that there's a way out. And if he goes to that address and does what his buddy who's dead, who Hamilton was at his funeral, but he's now alive and he sounds young and vibrant on the phone, that's enough to get Hamilton to go down labyrinthian maze,
He's so desperate that he's willing to engage in this mystery just for a particle of hope that there's a way out of this.
So now we move on to the second movement of the first act, right? And when Hamilton gets that phone call, we're 10 minutes in, right? That's kind of like the hook. Now we cut to the bank. And what Frankenheimer does is change the rhythm, the pace, and the energy. Now we're at a busy bank. Hamilton's doing a mundane, like dictating, you get the idea, like this is an awful job that's just repetitive, and he's dictating the same letter that he's dictated 1,000 times before to his secretary. But remember that buzzing throughout? When in a bank, there's like gates or doors you have to be buzzed through. So like the whole time he's dictating his letter, there's this buzzing happening, and he's staring at the door and he's wondering if he's going to go. And then he does go. Interestingly, I love the way he does that because he goes to the address, but of course the address is like nothing we would expect. It's the back room of a dry cleaning place with steam. And again, there's more machine sounds of the steamer, and and everybody in there is old. There's all these super old people.
I hadn't noticed that. Yeah.
Working the steamer, right?
Yeah.
All old and grizzled. And he's like, my name's Wilson. And he's looking around, and there's this old guy with a cigarette, and he's working the steamer, and steam is going everywhere. And then he won't talk to him. He's about to leave. And then the old guy hands him another address. And now he's got to go to another place, which is a meat packing plant. More machinery. But now we've got bloody cow carcasses hanging from hooks, and they're moving through frame. And all these people in white, bloods all over their jackets, and they're moving back and forth, yelling at each other. And the energy, Hamilton's moved into this unfamiliar, messy, noisy, bloody world. And there's a guy waiting him there, and he puts a hard hat on him and puts a butcher's jacket on him and puts him in the back of a meatpacking truck, like a refrigerating truck. He's got a ride in the back, and takes him to another address, which is the office building that he will then sit down with the guy, and we learn sort of what this story is going to be about. But I love that sequence because the writer and Frankenheimer have created this labyrinthian sort of way to get to the address, to follow the clue, which energized the story. If we'd have stayed in that kind of like, I'm trapped in this mundane world for longer than 10 minutes, it'd have been a whole nother movie. It wouldn't have worked like it does. So I thought that was clever filmmaking, the kind of filmmaking that is crafted, that takes craft to put together.
Absolutely. And if he had just hung up the phone with Charlie and was told, oh, go to this address tomorrow, and just showed up at some place of business and jumped right into the plot, right? What was going to happen to him? You would have lost all of that anxiety, the mystery, which so much of it, I think, reflects his internal uncertainty and fear. You wouldn't have that. You would just have an actor's face. Actors get a lot of stuff done with their faces, but I mean, it is a movie that is about existential. It's an existential mystery, and he visually dramatizes.
And does with pacing, he changes up the energy and the pace through this second sort of sequence. So that you feel physically, like you're being pushed through the story. Now you're kind of being dragged through this second sequence. And you're absolutely right. Like it wouldn't have worked very well if he'd have just shown up at the address the next day and there was some dude in a suit going to tell him what was going on. And then we get into what the story is. And the story is that Charlie, his buddy, has found this odd company that will recreate you as a brand new human being. They will recreate your life. There's some paperwork involved and some talk about how we're going to arrange your finances and your life insurance so that your wife and your daughter are taken care of. You don't have to worry about that. You will be set up and taken care of, with whatever money you have left. And they will literally find a cadaver and then beat that cadaver up so nobody can identify it, but it's identifiable enough to be you. Fake your own death. They'll do all this for you. And then they'll perform plastic surgery on you and create a younger man that you can now relive the life that Hamilton feels that has passed him by. So they create this whole life for him, and they have this, Frankenheimer does this wonderful montage of a surgery where they start with Hamilton, and by the end of the sequence, it's Rock Hudson taking off his bandages, and it's Rock. Yeah. But I love that he's all beat up and his hair is all messed up and he's got scars everywhere. And they really it's like the worst version of Rock Hudson. But it's, Rock Hudson is like, give it a couple weeks and the scars will heal and you'll be a brand new man. And I think that's about 30 minutes into the movie.
What I love about the premise, and the filmmakers obviously were conscious of this, is that counterculture element, but their prey, if you want to call them that, their target consumer for this service, this corporate service, is unhappy white men who they know, like, very specifically, you are affluent, you live this life, you must be unhappy. It is an acknowledgement that American dream is not enough, that there's sort of a false bill of goods that were sold to people.
Yeah.
Even when you get to be Rock Hudson, you're
Right.
still dealing with, the same bullshit.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of that's the story, you know. This guy gets to reinvent himself. He's given a nice beachfront Malibu
Mhm.
house with a butler who, of course, works for the company that has, provided this service
Mhm.
there to make sure everything goes smoothly. He's got everything that he could, but there's these great sequences where he's kind of eating by himself, and the butler comes out and he's like, you should throw a dinner party for your neighbors. And he's like, yeah. I'll in my own time. He's trying to adapt to this life that he's been thrown into, which is sort of the journey of the second act of him trying to find, like, okay, now what? Now what do I do with my life?
Yes.
And in our story, he kind of fucks that up too,
Mhm.
because he hasn't yet dealt with the reasons why he fucked up the first time. With this track that he's gone down, this rabbit hole that he's woken up from, and one day, that midlife crisis where you're like, what the hell just happened to my life? So I saw this movie in my mid-20s. Seeing it now, I'm 56 next month. It had a whole new resonance, for me.
Mhm. We should wrap this up then. This has been amazing. I love hearing the film through your perspective and that description of the train and the shots passing by outside.
For
It- it-
filmmakers, the first act of Seconds is really a master course in how to visually create a story and a feeling and understand character with no dialogue,
Mm.
all visual.
Mm.
And again, like in the script, it's a man who waits at a station, walks to the station, gets on a train, gets handed a piece of paper, goes home to his wife, right? And that sequence is so powerful. And the whole first act up until Rock, is really worth studying for a lot of different reasons.
Well, thank you, brother. I've enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for teaching me a couple things.
Oh, it's fun to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's been a blast. All right, you take care, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
You bet.
As for you listening, thank you again for your support of 5 a.m. Story Talk. Please be sure to drop a comment on this episode, ask questions, or just let me know what about it you enjoyed or you found the most helpful. And of course, if you can spread the word around the internet, social media, any way you can, it's a huge help as I build this podcast out. Next episode, I'll be joined by Hart Hansen, the creator of the longest-running drama in Fox Television's history, Bones. In the bonus episode, he'll be walking us through why the pilot episode of Northern Exposure is a seminal piece of art in his life. I hope to see you there.